Okay, I believe that we are live. Phew. So this is it. I think it's the first time I've done this in a long time, and it's the first time I've gone solo doing something like this. Usually I would be sitting down now doing a YouTube video talking about boxing or talking about my views about things in life. But I thought tonight I'll do something a little different and to celebrate Jermaine Taylor becoming the new IBF middleweight champion of the world. It's kind of funny because not too long ago, people were saying Jermaine Taylor's career was over and Jermaine Taylor was, shouldn't be in a ring again. There are people questioning whether he should still be in the ring at the moment. And what was he doing in the ring with Sam Soliman? I guess you could excuse the fact that Sam isn't a big puncher. But any punches to your head, regardless if you're a big puncher or not, are life-threatening. But beside that point, Taylor boxed okay. Sam Soliman, looked 40 years old. I mean, he was okay. He was open to Jermaine Taylor's right hand. Early on, I think Jermaine was kind of shaking off a lot of ring rust. But after he was shaking off the ring rust, it seemed to me that basically Taylor was just a different class to Sam Soliman. That's what it was. And Sam Soliman didn't have the punch really to stop Taylor in his tracks. Although Soliman was landing clean shots on Taylor's chin at times, you've got to ask yourself the question, what would have happened had Soliman not been a soft puncher and he'd been a hard puncher instead? But nonetheless, Jermaine Taylor is now IBF champion in the middleweight division. There'll be a queue of people wanting to fight Jermaine Taylor. The one fight I hope not to see, and I hope Jermaine Taylor himself doesn't decide to want it, is a fight against GGG, because that could end painfully early. The fact that Jermaine Taylor is IBF champion, well, yeah, who's he going to make defenses against? Could a defense be against someone like Billy Joe Saunders and Eubank Jr. When they sort of settle their differences? Peter Quillins in the middleweight division is floating around. Matthew Macklin's always getting world title chances. Would he be interested in taking a fight with Jermaine Taylor? We've also got Martin Murray. Let's not forget, of course, Miguel Cotto, the new middleweight that has popped up from the welterweight in the light middleweight division, beating Sergio Martinez. Was that performance because Martinez basically was shot to pieces and his knees had gone, or would Cotto have beaten him anyway? Don't know. And of course, there's always the possibility that Canelo could move up as well, which makes the weight division interesting. He has business to handle with Rubio. I believe Rubio's had more knockouts than GGG's had fights, but judging by GG's knocking everybody out, you'd expect him to do a number on Rubio. But back to the Sam Soliman Taylor fight. Now, it's good to see Taylor is champion, but he'll be a vulnerable champion. Just as Soliman was a vulnerable champion, I think Taylor's an even more vulnerable champion. And while we celebrate him now being IBF middleweight champion of the world, and it's great that he has accomplished a feat that a lot of people didn't think he could do, hasn't he still got a gun charge? Something about a gun, some sort of thing with a gun he's got to deal with as well. I don't know the ins and outs. I've heard about it, but I don't know the ins and outs because I'm not from America and I haven't reread the news too much on it, to be honest, since starting university. But I do know he had some gun charge. And the other day I saw a funny video with Jermaine Taylor, actually. And he had a gun in his hand and he was popping off the gun. And if you're down for a gun charge, really popping off a gun on a YouTube video really isn't doing yourself any great favors. So, okay, Jermaine Taylor, let's go back to him being the champion now. He's a vulnerable champion. And if anything were to happen to Jermaine Taylor in the ring now, should he suffer serious brain damage, who is going to be responsible? Is it Jermaine Taylor? Will it be his responsibility that he's gone and get himself injured? Surely he's a fighter. You know, he knows the risks of being in the ring fighting. However, the issues with Jermaine Taylor are, if Jermaine Taylor does get injured, does the boxing board of control or the state that Jermaine Taylor is a part of, would he or the state take responsibility for that? Is there insurance for that? Because surely Jermaine Taylor is, you know, he's one of those cases that should he be fighting at all? So, I mean, let's see. Have I got anybody in the chat room yet? Because I don't want to cut anybody out. Let's check and see. Good evening to anybody who's in the room watching. This is the first time I'm actually doing this. So we'll see how it goes and doing it live rather than just doing recorded stuff. See as it happens. So if you're in the room, just leave your comments in the chat group, all the messages, and I'll try and answer any questions that are there. Yeah, as for Sam Soliman, he came into the ring smiling. He left the ring wincing. I think he damaged his knee or his ankle, he twisted it. And you know what other surprised me about that fight? The amount of time Soliman was getting knocked down, and it was clear after about, I don't know, after about the first knockdown, he got up and he tried to fight on, that Taylor was just beating him up. And the referee is just like, protect yourselves at all times. But really, Sam Soliman was a one-legged fighter. Yes, and I know the whole thing about, okay, he's a champion, he's got to defend himself, you got to give him the chance to fight. But the guy was getting beat up in there. He was basically one-legged. And when you've got one leg, I don't know if any of you box before, if you've got one leg, you're trying to get balance, your stability is on two legs, so you're trying to, off one leg, maybe with your back leg, or, to lean off and throw a left hook or a right hand, whatever, but just to get leverage. You can't generate leverage or power, to try and knock a guy out, if you've only got one leg. So referee should have stopped that fight long time. But, and then you got the trainers and corner, I'm going to give you one more round. One more round to do what? The guy's leg or his knee's like shot. One more round to do what? He's not a puncher. He wasn't a puncher before he got in the ring. And in all the rounds that Soliman was running around, dropping his hands and throwing punches and catching Taylor, all the time he was doing that, didn't really hurt Taylor. So now a guy's got one leg, is suddenly going to pull out a punch out of nowhere? Come on, get out of here, man. So I'm not so sure about his trainer, Soliman's trainer. The one thing is he wasn't smiling when he was going back to the corner in the end. And, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what's going to happen with Sam Soliman now. Maybe he'll be in some world title fight somewhere else down the line. Who knows? He's had a good innings and he's been world champion, so you can't take that away from him. Again, congratulations to Jermaine Taylor. Let's move on. Middleweight division still. Eubank Jr. and Billy Joe Saunders, the fight that a lot of British fans have been looking forward to, is finally going to be signed and sealed and delivered. I remember talking to Billy Joe Saunders, and if you go on the Bellew YouTube channel, you'll see my interview with Billy Joe Saunders. Actually, on the same day at the time that Eubank didn't turn up to the original press conference, was when Billy Joe Saunders was talking about his European title fight, which was just a separate press conference just to talk about Billy Joe Saunders. But anyway, was there. Frank Warren was there. I think Francis Warren was there. And I did it interview and asked about Chris Eubank Jr. And at the time, his lawyer was there, much to the surprise. He knew that Eubank wasn't going to turn up. So it was of no surprise that when this fight was going to get set up and put together, that they would not sign a contract unless it was 120% certain. Let me tell you something now. When I used to box years ago, down in Sussex, this is where Eubank comes from. I knew Chris fairly well. He'd come and watch me spar, and I'd watch him when I used to go for my runs early in the morning. Chris Eubank would go for his runs. And they say people train the way they fight. And Chris Eubank, from what I always remembered, he would run down along the Brighton seafront, and he'd run a bit, he'd stop, and he'd pose. To see somebody, sign the autograph, and go on. So Eubank did these things as you see him fight. You can never fight for 3 minutes. fight for a minute and a half and then pose and pose and pose. That whole Eubank thing was as much of a personality thing, which made him sell himself, as to who he really was as an individual. I go on to say this much. I know Eubank enough to know that his son would have taken a shellacking, a big, before even get anywhere near Billy Joe Saunders. There is no way that Chris Eubank Sr. is going to allow his son to step in the ring against Billy Joe Saunders unless they've seen something. Believe me, unless they've seen something. Now, I don't know if you all saw the Billy Joe Saunders video and Eubank promo video, which is absolutely hilarious. And Billy Joe Saunders saying, he shoot. He can't punch. Then you see a thing of Eubank knocking a guy out with one punch from an uppercut. He can't do this. He can't do that. He can't do this. And he went on to say, oh, yeah, well, my followers, I've got 40,000 followers on my Twitter page, and Eubank's got 102,000 followers. I think Saunders, for me, my advice is Billy Joe Saunders, now the fight is sealed. And I like Billy Joe. I actually do like him as a fighter. I think he's a very talented fighter. Keep your mouth shut. Really keep your mouth shut and focus on the fight, because you may have a fight of your life on and you may even get beat. My concern for Billy Joe Saunders is this. Billy Joe Saunders has done it the right way. British, Commonwealth, European. Why are you going backwards to face a man that hasn't even won a British title? He hasn't even fought anybody in the top 10. Yet you're taking this fight because you don't like him. And, you know, you've got a world title fight just ahead of you. Literally your next fight's a world title fight. So then what happens? What happens? What happens should he get beat? Where does that put Billy Joe Saunders? If Billy Joe Saunders is to go out there and get absolutely annihilated, destroyed, really like beat up really badly, where does that put Billy Joe Saunders? And all of what he's achieved so far, how do you come back from that? And more to a point, Chris Eubank Jr., should he win this fight? Him. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders would be the best opponent he's fought to date. He'd be in a position now that he'd have beaten the guy who won the British, Commonwealth, and European Championship. So what would his world ranking be? Would he take Billy Joe Saunders' world ranking? And then that means what? They're fighting for the European title? What happens then? Does that mean that Eubank becomes the European champion? So that means he misses out a whole gulf of, you know, British and Commonwealth sort of things to learn and fighters to develop and really hone his craft on. And then he's right in the European mix. He has to defend the title against some top European fighters. Can't duck and dive that. I mean, I'm not saying Chris Eubank isn't good enough. No. I think he's good enough. My question is, why Billy Joe Saunders? Are you looking to you know, shortcut your way to a world title? Is it really wise? And the other thing is, you know, he's trained with all these other people, sparring with all these other people. Sparring is one thing. Sparring is one thing. Doing and doing it is another thing altogether. And the one thing Billy Joe Saunders has got on his side is experience. You cannot knock experience and fighting top class opponents. How good is Chris Eubank Jr.? Who knows? But this is a great fight. And I'll tell you something. This fight has got more attention than the main event, which is Chisora Fury. Chisora Fury is like kind of like, it should be the other way around. Chisora Fury should be the undercard, and you know, Eubank Jr. and Billy Joe Saunders should be main event. If you look at the interest, I mean, everybody knows. Not every. I won't say everybody. Most boxing people know that Tyson Fury and Derek Chisora don't hate one another. It's just business. It's just business. But Eubank Jr. and Billy Joe Saunders, they don't like one another. And I think really Billy Joe Saunders really does not like Chris Eubank Jr. to the point where it's hatred. And I'll take you back again to when Eubank fought Ben. Ben, again, had fought the big names, was world champion. He'd done it. He'd seen it and done it. Eubank, on the other hand, started his career quietly in the States, came over to the UK, signed with promoter Barry Hearn, and said, keep me undefeated, you know, pick the right fights, and you know, I'll stick with you. So Eubank was quite clear. He was not interested in getting into too many tough fights. He was only going to fight who he wanted to fight. And he saw Nigel Benn, and he saw something in Nigel Benn. And on that night, he beat Nigel Benn, despite the fact that Ben had to lose 15 pounds of weight before the fight. On the night of the fight, Eubank went out and he beat Nigel Benn. Eubank was a complete nobody. Nobody knew who Eubank was. Who was this clown they were saying? Who's this idiot? Who's this guy posing around? Who does he think he is? We'll get Ben to bash him up. They were saying, what happened? Ben became a cropper. Oh, overnight Eubank was a star because he beat the well-known Nigel Benn. Could history be repeating itself here? I think Billy Joe Saunders and his people need to have a closer look at Chris Eubank Jr. Why would they take this fight? Why? They obviously know that there's something there. Okay. Now, is that worth pay-per-view? Would you pay-per-view to see that fight? I mean, Eubank Jr. is unproven, and Billy Joe Saunders is European level. We can't say he's world level just yet, because he hasn't fought in world level, but he's on the way to it. He's closer to it than Eubank is. So would you pay pay-per-view to watch Billy Joe Saunders and Tyson Fury? Let me ask you, see Tony Bellew and Nathan Cleverly. You both know where their levels are at light heavyweight. Cleverly got put to sleep by Kovalev, and Stevenson was doing target practice with Bellew. I say target practice with Bellew, and I like Tony Bellew. And I do like Nathan Cleverly for different reasons. Bellew I like because he's a personality, he's a character. Cleverly I like because he makes Tony Bellew in that sense. You know, without a Cleverly, without Cleverly, Bellew's not the same for me. The same color for character. You know, Cleverly brings something special out in Tony Bellew, and I really do believe Tony Bellew where he talks about losing weight and being a cruiserweight and struggling to make the light heavyweight limit. I do believe that, and I do believe also that Nathan Cleverly, he really has got nothing to be beating his chest about in the cruiserweight division, because Bellew's got it spot on. He's fought nobody decent, that even half decent as a cruiserweight, and he said he's waiting for his body to fill in. I mean, Nathan Cleverly's problem is not his body filling it; it's his mind. You know, Cleverly fell apart again, not just because Kovalev is a big puncher, but mentally, if you look at him after the fight, you look at Bellew after the fight when he got done by Stevenson, and you look at the way Cleverly was. Cleverly didn't want to talk to anybody. He went into hiding, talked about he wanted to quit boxing. Bellew dusted himself down, picked himself up, and said, you know what? Shit happens. I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to become world champion, but I'm going to do it at cruiserweight. The one thing I was always saying about Bellew, I said, you know what? This guy can't punch. Why are they calling him bomb for anyway? I was saying that as he was moving up to cruiserweight division, and all of a sudden, boom, knocking guys out. He's knocking better opposition out and proper cruiserweights out compared to this Cleverly guy who's been knocking out super middleweights. Mentally, the question people who are Cleverly fans have to ask twofold. Number one, is Nathan Cleverly a genuine cruiserweight? Or is he a light heavyweight eating himself up to being a cruiserweight? That's the first question. And secondly, has Nathan Cleverly recovered from the beating that Kovalev put him, and that was a beating. The referee was carrying him back to the corner. How many fights do you see a referee carrying the fighter back to the corner? Not just the fighter, the world champion, carrying him back to the corner and putting him on a stool. Isn't that crazy? So those are the images that stick in my mind about Nathan Cleverly. And I suspect when Cleverly lands, when Bellew lands one of them big bombs on Nathan's chin, and early, I think we could be seeing a early night for Bellew. I think Bellew wins the fight inside the distance. There's so much dislike there. I think Bellew's going to come in, you know, as a big cruiserweight, possibly weighing closer to a heavyweight than a cruiserweight on the night. I think he's really going to overpower Cleverly. Cleverly can talk about speed all he wants. Oh, I'm quick, I'm fast, I'm quick. What happened the last time Cleverly met a puncher? Where was all that speed? The only speed that was speed to put him to sleep. That was it. So for me, I don't see how Cleverly wins this fight. Is he going to be that much faster and that technically that good that he can outbox Bellew for 12 rounds and physically overpower the man? Can he do it? I don't think he can. I really can't see it happening. But been proven wrong many times before. But I'm looking for Bellew to win this fight within six or 7 rounds. It could be even earlier. It just depends on what happens when Bellew lands that big right hand or left hook on the chin. And not as a light heavyweight, as a cruiserweight. What happens? So there's my thoughts on Bellew Cleverly. The next fight, Kovalev versus Hopkins. I call this fight the changing of the guard. Hopkins has been a great champion and has achieved many things in his career. At 49 or 50, the man has no right to be in the ring, to be honest, now at this day and age. But he has done it because of ring smarts, generalship, and a lot excellent ability. This not the biggest, not the strongest, but one of the smartest boxers there are around. Defensively cute, boring as hell to watch. If anyone can sit down and tell me Bernard Hopkins is an exciting fighter to watch, well, fine. But technical, wow, a master, a genius. But in the other corner, he faces a fighter who I said beforehand has got atomic knockout power, not just hit you and you go down, you get up. This guy is knocking you out and he's not even trying. Much like GGG, Kovalev for me is the real McCoy when it comes to punching. He has bad intentions when he punches. People say, well, you know what? If Hopkins can take away, and that's how the argument is with Hopkins. If Hopkins can make Kovalev miss, if Hopkins can do this, what happens if he can't? What happens if the guy hits too damn? You know, you can fiddle your way around. I mean, look, he has been dropped already as a light heavyweight. Pascal's dropped him, you know, and the fact that Hopkins has been dropped in his career at middleweight and at light heavyweight leads me to believe that he's not it's not to see him get dropped again. The guys that dropped Hopkins, I don't think carried the sort of power that this fella does. There's a few fighters that come to mind here. Kelly Pavlik was never a light heavyweight. He was a super middleweight, a trouble super middleweight who came in straight lines. And yes, Pavlik punched, but not as hard as Kovalev. So let's get that right. By the time he got up to light heavyweight to fight Hopkins, Hopkins had him messed up. And as I said, Pavlik's never been the same fighter since. Another fighter, Oscar De La Hoya, big puncher, welterweight. Fighting him at middleweight, the left hook of De La Hoya's had little to no effect. And that took away one of Oscar's best attributes. We could go through a few more fighters, but for me, this fight against Kovalev, I'm afraid to say, is one step too far for Bernard Hopkins. And one person said the other day, said, yes, I can't wait to see GGG face Bernard Hopkins. And then somebody in the Facebook page said, Bernard Hopkins is going to be facing God soon. I didn't quite understand what he meant, because the son of God is Andre Ward. So obviously they're calling Crusher God. I wouldn't go as far as that, but I don't believe Hopkins gets past the Crusher. I think he may try and fiddle his way around things, try and frustrate Sergey Kovalev. But I think Sergey Kovalev is also a very patient fighter. I think he's a guy who's going to methodically hunt you down and throw punches. If he doesn't knock Hopkins, he stops him late. That's my belief in the fight. You can counter punch all day long. Hopkins is going to need to use his legs in the fight. He's going to have to keep Kovalev turning, twisting and turning. I do believe if Hopkins can keep Kovalev from setting his feet, and this is the only way I believe Hopkins can win this fight, he has to keep Kovalev constantly moving. He's got to keep him moving. I can't allow Kovalev to set his feet. And when he does set his feet, land the shots. That's the way he beats Kovalev. But even at that point, you're still taking a chance of engaging with Kovalev. And once you're engaging with someone like Kovalev, you know, there's problems, because this guy can put you to sleep with one shot. And I really do believe this about Sergey Kovalev. I do believe he's the real deal. So for me, it's the passing of the guard, you know. And what will people say about Kovalev? Should he defeat Bernard Hopkins? What will people say about Kovalev? Oh, well, you beat a 50-year-old man. You meant to beat a 50-year-old man. Will he get the credit for that? Or will people say, fight, beat a really good guy? All that, he beat Shumanov and became world champion, unified world champion. So, you know, you can't really say that Hopkins is a bad fighter or an aging fighter. But then Hopkins could go old overnight. I believe, truly, that youth, power, and experience, and I think Kovalev's got a good boxing brain as well. His punch power seems to overshadow the fact that he actually can box and close the range down. So I think Hopkins may have overlooked something here. And I'm going Kovalev by stoppage. So let's move on. And let's talk about boxing in general. Now, there is a common trend within boxing today that I have noticed. And it's a trend which is boxers that are perceived to be great before they've even met a challenge, or guys who've got big knockout records, who you see highlights of them knocking guys out, boom, 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 boom. We're going, he's unbeaten in 20 fights or 23 fights and 25 fights. Never fought anybody in the top 10. Never really been hit back on the chin. Never really gone past 4 or 5 rounds. Oh, because they don't need to, because they're a big puncher. And, you know, we're talking about them being world beaters and greats and all this stuff. And I think it's a bit premature. Fighters then being compared to fighters of yesteryear. Look, there's some guys who've never even got past 10 rounds, and they've been put in the ring with guys, greats like, you know, Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns and Sugar Ray Robinson. And come on, slow down a second. These guys have not gone past 12, done 12 rounds. Even big punchers like George Foreman and Mike Tyson went 12 rounds. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there's certain things I expect to see in a fight before we can start saying, yeah, he's pretty good. You know, you want to see him in a fight where they take a shot and they can come back. They prove they can take a shot against a guy who's equally as skilled or has the ambition to win. You know, it's no point having a record of knocking all these guys out, and then when it comes to a title fight, you then meet a guy who's throwing punches back at you. You're not prepared for that. You, like I said, you can do all the sparring you want in the gym, but come fight night, the ring, and you're facing a guy who's now hitting you back on the chin, making your legs do little dances, you know, and they're hitting so hard you cannot think about throwing your own punches. It's a whole different ball game. And I think fighters today are given far too much credit way too quickly. Way too quickly. Way too quickly. And what's all this business about guys like just rushing to world title fights? You know, guys who had 15, 20 fights, they jump into fight for a world title. They haven't served their apprenticeship. They've not done they've got the basics, the fundamentals right. You know, gone the distance a few fights, gone in a few had a few testing fights. It's not about that. You wait 10 hours knocking guys out, they're not even in the top 20. I'm telling you, a world beater. I don't understand it. And I don't understand why boxing fans get suckered into it. And they believe what these promoters, my God, they believe what the promoters are telling them. And what's even worse is that these TV stations, these TV networks should know better. They should know a lot better. You've got boxing fans who are watching these fights, not the knowledgeable ones. I won't say the boxing fans, because that's disrespecting boxing fans. I think the casual armchair fan is watching a boxing fight, and you know the fights I'm talking about, the sort of fights that you know, as the fight is mentioned before the press conference, and you read about it on Twitter and Facebook. These two fighters are going to get together. You go, yeah, I know who's going to win the fight. Just wonder how quick it's going to be for them to get rid of him. That sort of fight. Now, when that happens, and you watch those fights as a casual fight, you think, this guy's really good. He beat the other guy really well. And then you've got the commentator. He's world class. He's absolutely world class. He's definite world class. He's the best prospect there is in this. He's one of the best prospects in the world. Right. In what world? Because he just knocked somebody out he's meant to knock out, who'd been knocked out 5 times already. What has he done different? Well, he did it quicker. And then they compare it to a world champion that did it. And then they say, yeah, you see the parallels there. He did it in that round. He did it earlier. And yeah, it makes him a better fighter. Or he's on that level. But what they don't tell you is that guy he fought was about 10 years ago. And the guy he's fighting now has got knocked out about 5 times since. And he's just turned up to get knocked out. But they don't tell you that. And far too much of this is happening in boxing. And far too many armchair fans are getting caught by it. And then I'm hearing Eddie Hearn, bless him. He's talking about Anthony Joshua next year going to beat. He's going to go and fight a David Haye next year, and Joshua could beat this person. Joshua could beat that person. He could beat Tyson Fury. He could beat Derek Chisora. You know, these guys are seasoned pros now. They've gone the 12 rounds. You know, they've been in tough fights. They've been dropped. In Tyson Fury's case, he's got back up to win. You know, Joshua's not even been hit back on the chin yet as a pro properly, and he hasn't gone 10 rounds or 12 rounds yet. But yet we're talking about this guy fighting guys. Hayes been a world champion at cruiserweight and at heavyweight. You know, he's a big puncher. He's got good movement. You know, you're talking about Derek Chisora, European champion. You're talking about Tyson Fury, who, you know, a lot of people believe will beat Derek Chisora. But yet, Anthony Joshua is being held as, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's not disrespect to Anthony Joshua now. Let's get something straight. Joshua's got some serious power there. But I'm concerned with the direction they're taking Joshua in. I made this point about Frank Buglioni back. I think Buglioni had about his 9th. If this keeps happening and they do not address the technical flaws within this fighter now, going forward against better opposition, he'll get knocked out, because you can't keep having rows with guys and you're getting tagged against guys who should be blown away. I mean, you're getting tagged by journeymen. Every fight you're getting tagged. Every fight you're getting tagged. So, of course, when you step up and fight a guy who not only can tag you, but can tag you clean and hurt you, you're suddenly in a position from getting tagged and firing back to getting tagged and getting knocked out. And this is what happened to Frank Buglioni. And I'd said this about 3 to 5 fights before he actually went and got knocked out. And I said he'd get knocked out by a guy that was virtually unknown. And that's exactly what happened to him. And it's the same trainer now that's training Anthony Joshua. And Joshua is making similar mistakes, you know, pulling back his chin up in the air, you know, dropping his hand, trying to jab, dropping the hand and leaving the right hand over to be caught. And these things can't be capitalized by these guys who are fighting at the moment. But what happens is we get into a habit. So when we move up a level, we try and do those same things. So then you meet a guy that's a little smart, and when he's experienced journeyman, who come with just about enough ambition and good enough dig. And then all of a sudden you're doing what you normally do, and boom, you get caught. And then there's trouble. You know, and then what do we say then? Oh, he wasn't good enough. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Joshua needs to be with a trainer who has got a pedigree of producing heavyweight champions, world champions, you know, and give him not only the fundamental skills, but the experience that only a trainer that's produced world champions can. And I am not sure, but don't know why Joshua's gone with this trainer. I believe that it's only after Joshua gets knocked out, questioning the trainer. I'm doing it now. But I would like to see Joshua the trainer, and for him to either go stateside or bring in an American trainer. I really do. Let's take, for example, now David Price. David Price is a fighter that is, as far as I'm concerned, has been written off by many, but I think David Price is going to come back with a vengeance. I really do. David Price is quietly rebuilding his career over in Germany. And I did state this about David Price. When David Price got knocked out by Tony Thompson, I did a video and I said, David, pack your bags, get out to either Germany or get out to America. But get away from Liverpool. Move away from Liverpool. It's doing you no good. And what does he do? He's packed his bags. He's over in Germany. That's the best thing that could have happened with David Price. There's an example of a fighter that was getting hyped up way too soon. Remember David Price? They were saying, oh, he's going to fight the Klitschko's. He'll beat the Klitschko's. He's not this guy. He's not that guy. He's world class. And what happens? He met a vet that was experienced, took advantage of his weaknesses at the time, basic boxing like a raw novice at times, didn't know how to deal with a guy hitting him back. Guy took advantage of Price's openings, boom. And in the second fight, which he didn't have to take automatically, didn't have enough time to prepare in terms of making those technical adjustments, what do you get? Repeat. And then don't mention anything like, well, Lennox Lewis was helping him out. Really? What would Lennox Lewis have given? What advice could Lennox Lewis have given to Tony Thompson when Lennox Lewis himself? How many southpaws did Lennox Lewis fight in his career? Right. So then you're going to ask Lennox Lewis to give you advice on how to beat a southpaw. How many southpaws did he beat? Right. Okay. So really you want a trainer that's got some experience, not some guy who did box, was world champion, but had his own unique style. So technical adjustments need to be made, and you need to bring in certain guys to do that. Now, someone like Tommy Brooks, who now Price has brought into his camp now, is an excellent choice of trainer. Tommy Brooks, you'll see now Price he's blocking shots. He's blocking shots like they do in the States. He's learning how to defend. And when your chin is not the greatest, it's in your best interest not to have it stuck out in the air. You want to keep it tucked in and be nice and tight. And that's what Price is learning to be defensively, better defensive minded. Price still punches like a mule because he got knocked out by Tony Thompson. And Tony Thompson's no mug, by the way. Thompson's no mug. He was number 2 to Klitschko, and in the first fight gave Klitschko a nightmare of a fight. So Thompson's no mug, and Thompson's a southpaw. And southpaws are very awkward to fight. So, you know, a lot of people are kind of harsh on David Price there. David Price took on a real good fighter there. And, you know, he may have been rushed into that fight, I think. And so there you are now, David Price. So the perception of fighters. Question I'm asking people today who probably didn't tune in now, but may tune in later and see this video. The question I'm asking you, the boxing fan. Is it too soon to be rating guys as world class and future world champions when they A, haven't gone past 10 rounds, or B, haven't fought anybody in the top 10, or C, haven't been taken into a real test in their career? And the other subject I want to talk about to close and to finish this off, personalities. And this is a big one in the UK because, in my opinion, Prince Naseem Hamed still remains to be the greatest entertainer the UK has known. Chris Eubank can come behind him. And I say simply because Eubank, although he did his world tour, the world tour never stopped in America. And the problem with that is Eubank did all his fighting around Europe. Naz went to America. You know, when he went and fought Kevin Kelly, what a fight that was. You know, entering the arenas with, you know, flying carpets and all razzmatazz. Naz was an entertainer. He entertained you inside the ring with his dazzling hand speed, power, movement, hitting guys from unorthodox angles. And the highlight reels from Naz in his fights was just a joy to watch. And when Naz would get out of the ring, he'd talk a lot of rubbish, but my God, I think he had a cheeky smile with it as well. You knew Naz was talking rubbish, but Naz said it because it's hype. That's why people love Naz. You know, Naz was like, boom, with a shot and knock you out. And you knew Naz is exciting. You know, Eubank again was a different sort of fighter. Wasn't as exciting as Naz, but his posing and strutting and almost uniqueness in himself that drew a lot of attention, you know. And personality, I'll go back to this point. It seems today that, especially in the UK, I think this PR rubbish, and I have to say PR, being politically correct, is a load of rubbish boxing. Not these guys, boxers coming from working class backgrounds, a lot of them. You know, boxing is not about creating the next politician. You're looking to create the next champion of the world. You know, these people, a lot of these people come from nothing, and boxing's their way out of the ghetto, out of, you know, a life of crime. Some of them are coming out of prison to get into boxing. You know, and you want them talking like the Queen or the Prime Minister, and that's just not going to happen. So, what does this become? And then when you have personalities in boxing in the UK, we're ready to slag them off. We've got personalities. We've got guys like Tony Bellew, who, you know, his last two fights have been a bit better, but he has been at times a bit of a bore to watch, Tony Bellew. But when you've got him at a press conference and he's talking, he's exciting. You know, he makes you want to watch him. Either you want to watch him get beat or you want to see him win a fight to see if he can back up the goods. So he's one of the exciting fighters we've got. There's another one. You wouldn't say he's a personality because he is a big talker. I think he's a personality because he thinks he believes he's the John Wayne of boxing. Of course, the John Wayne of boxing went a little bit too far, and him and David Haye brawling in Munich wasn't too clever. Put a black eye in boxing, so they say. But again, that event created the big fight between Haye and Chisora. And more people watch boxing because of that brawl in Germany. So you got David Haye, another personality, you know, but he's a personality probably people take because for the wrong reasons, because of the I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, and all the other things that David Haye's been known for apart from boxing. But that's the way David done to sell his tickets. You can't knock him for that. Obviously, pulling out of fights don't help. And I'm sure David will want to repair his PR, the damage that's done. But I believe I believe David still has time to not only repair the damage he's done with a lot of boxing fans, which I believe, and I believe that this next part of his career could be the most exciting in his career. What he does with it, I don't know, but I believe that he's got the personality and the charisma to be a global superstar. Why he hasn't been one, I don't know. Apart from the fact that he pulled out in 2 fights. He pulled out 2 fights with Tyson Fury. Obviously, the first fight he pulled out with Vitaly Klitschko, the Manuel Shah fight. So, you know, a lot of time being wasted, injuries. But I believe David Haye can still do it. Tyson Fury, another personality. But with Tyson, I spoke to him in the interview before he went to the press conference and he got fined by the British Boxing Board of Control. He basically said that promoters sort of put him up to, you know, being the character that he is. So he did take the onus and say, yeah, I was wrong in what I said, and really I kicked off and I shouldn't have kicked off and sworn the way I did. But he also said that the promoters put him up to it, and then he has to pay. So he said, you know what, from now on I'm not doing it. So credit to Tyson Fury for speaking out. It seems people that speak out, there seems to be a problem for people that speak out. And I think that we need to embrace these fighters more. They're the guys that sell the tickets. They're the guys that are making the effort to sell their fights. If you don't sell tickets, nobody pays to come and watch you fight. That's not good. And there are a lot of fighters in the UK that seriously need to get some PR training in terms of how to sell tickets. They complain about not selling tickets, yet they don't want to engage on Facebook. They don't want to do interviews, but yet they want to sell tickets. So, you know, you have to do a little bit more than just say, buy my ticket, watch me fight. You need to do a little bit more than that as a fighter. And that's where promoters and management, and if you haven't got a good promoter or a good manager and you're self-promoting or self-managing, that's where social media comes in handy. And there's so many people on YouTube now that are doing boxing interviews and podcasts. My advice to a lot of fighters out there, get yourself immersed within the boxing community. There's not everybody's great to talk to because there's some people that just want to hear their voices be heard rather than actually care about the sport. So, you know, it would be great if more boxers got involved in the YouTube community. And yeah, that'd be good as well. In closing, women's boxing. I believe the WBC had a convention recently to celebrate women's boxing. Where has women's boxing gone? Still there's Cecilia Brækhus and Ava Knight are still fighting, and there's a few others knocking around still. And it's a shame because I actually enjoyed women's boxing. I enjoyed watching the women fight before the big fights with whip men. What happened? Why did they just pull the plug of Riker and Layla Ali and Ann Wolf? You know, they were good fights, really good fighters, and really good fights they're involved in. What happened? Why did it suddenly all stop? Who pulled the plug in it? Oscar De La Hoya talks about he's looking forward to promoting women's fights in the future. Oscar, why is it taking you so damn long? You know, that's the question I'd be asking. I mean, you know, I can't see why you couldn't promote a women's fight. Ava Knight made it quite clear to me when she was talking to me in the interviews that she was fed up of going to Mexico to fight, and she's an American fighter. She can't get fights in America. She has to go to Mexico. So she went and she said that she's going to get her and Floyd were talking of doing some sort of deal. So she's over now at Floyd Mayweather's gym. So I think I've got. While we end, I will end on the Floyd Mayweather note. Floyd, money, Mayweather. 47-0. The best ever. Really? Yeah, I would say he's the best ever. But wait. He's the best ever salesman in boxing. He is the best relations officer in boxing. He's a one-man show. Floyd Mayweather. Highest grossing paid boxer ever? To leave one network, go to another network, and basically take that network over and be the man on it? You know, Mayweather has done what other boxers could only dream of wanting to do. And that's because he's got an element of skill. He's such a high skill level. But the aim of boxing is to hit and not get hit. Okay, you can say that Mayweather's boring because, you know, he doesn't stay there and stand blow for blow and take punches, because that's the art of boxing. It's to hit and not get hit. That's the science of boxing, okay? Whereas people prefer Pacquiao because Pacquiao gets in there, throws punches, goes toe-to-toe with guys, and win, lose, or draw, he's an exciting fighter. But Pacquiao is technically flawed. He doesn't fight well against counter punches, and you saw that again. 3 fights with Marquez, whom Mayweather beat very easily. You know, and people are saying, well, Mayweather, Pacquiao, if Mayweather ever fights Pacquiao and he beats Pacquiao, who's it going to be next? I mean, I think the next thing people will say is Mayweather, GGG, Mayweather, I don't know, whoever next, Andre Ward. Somebody stupidly said, yeah, Mayweather should fight Andre Ward. Stupid, because, but okay, let's look this out. Andre Ward and Mayweather, the fact that they're huge weight differences apart. When Roy Jones left the light heavyweight division to go and fight then John Ruiz, was the weight difference that much? Was 2 weight divisions? Light heavy, cruiserweight, heavyweight? Did the weight make that much of a difference? And Floyd did beat Canelo, and Canelo is a light middle, but I don't know, was way more of a middleweight that night. I don't know. Is it possible? Can it happen? Could it happen? Realistically? I don't know. Ray Robinson fought at welterweight and went right up to fought right up at light heavyweight. Thomas Hearns fought at what? Welterweight as well, and went right up to cruiserweight. So, don't know. I don't know. But the thing with people who dismiss Floyd. So, okay, I'll say, okay, you dismiss Floyd. You don't like Floyd. You don't like him because of his personality, or you don't like him because of his boxing skill. But if you don't like Floyd because of his personality, okay, fine. But if you're looking and say you don't like him because of his boxing skills, who are you comparing those boxing skills to? Because you can't look me in the eye and tell me Pacquiao's a better skill fighter than Mayweather, because he's not. You can't say you like Pacquiao because he's a more successful fighter than Mayweather, because he's not. So when you're trying to weigh things up,
you've got mail.
How are you basically deciding this? And I'm not talking about, oh, I don't like Mayweather because Sugar Ray Robinson was a better fighter, or I don't like Mayweather because you know, another guy's a better fighter. That's like zillions of miles away in terms of years, the time gap 20, 30 years ago. Talk about now. You can't even say like GGG's knocking people out. It's as cute defensively as Mayweather. Boxing in its purest sense and science is hit and not get hit. Boxing is not about taking a whole heap of punches and proving how brave and how strong you are. That is the barbaric and most basic. Reason why these guys are getting hit with a whole heap of punches, because they can't adapt their style and they got no time for defense. That's why those fights are like that, right? 2 guys who just like 2 gorillas going. I'm not telling you it's not exciting, but that's not skill. That's not class. And Mayweather oozes that class, which a lot of people can't handle, and they just want to see him get beat. But while you want to get and see him get beat, you've got to remember Mayweather's drawing more and more fans to the world of boxing. So, you know, I think I'll leave it as that. Yep. So that's it, really. Let me know what your thoughts are on the whole of this live YouTube video. Whether I should do it again. It's a one-off. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time. Let's see if I can see if there's anybody here. Let me see if I can adjust the settings on this to see whether there's anybody in the room. Let's see. Nope. Nope. Let's see. Is anybody else in the room here? Let's see. Control room. No, in the chat with me. Nobody wants to talk to me. Look. No. Okay. That's about it. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Take care.